The Death Note soundtrack is really something special. It's subtle one moment, then knocks you off your feet the next. Flavors of progressive rock, classical, choir, ambient, and orchestra help to give the anime viewing experience a very specific feeling. While I think the manga, of course, goes deeper into the story and fleshes out all the characters properly, there's an indescribable feeling when you watch the Death Note anime for the first time. I've probably seen it a dozen times in full now, ever since my first viewing back in middle school. The show is incredibly original and keeps the viewer on their toes, in large part thanks to the magnificent soundtrack that accompanies it. So first off, I'd like to introduce the two composers that worked on the Death Note anime soundtrack, the first being Yoshihisa Hirano. Hirano was an immensely talented composer from a young age, first interested in Baroque music and later getting into jazz and avant-garde styles. After teaching himself music composition as a kid, he went on to further his knowledge at Juilliard. To those who have seen Death Note, you may notice a difference in styles within the OST. Hirano's compositions include Low of Solipsism, otherwise known as the potato chip theme song.
Just watch me, El. I'll solve equations with my right hand and write names with my left. I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
Kyrie and Requiem, all beautifully composed tracks that really lean on the orchestra to get their point across. Many of his tracks for the anime feature Latin, or maybe faux Latin, I'm really not certain if it's legit Latin, choral songs that help build the tension and really lean into that Christian imagery that is so prevalent in the show. His arrangements for the string and horn parts especially lean into that more thriller horror aspect. And when you're not picturing these grand, powerful songs in Death Note, your mind probably jumps to the tracks that were composed by the other composer, Hideki Taniuchi. Taniuchi has worked on a number of anime series, serving as both an arranger and composer. There isn't a ton of info out there about his road to becoming a composer, or really any of his activities post-2012. Sadly, in 2012, he was arrested for possession of marijuana, but from some little snippets of information I've gathered on online forums and just comments in YouTube videos, it seems like he's doing well now and he's still composing music, so I do hope that that's true and everything's going good for him. In my opinion, Taniuchi's tracks sound a lot more Japanese, if that makes sense. There isn't as much as a classical influence on his songs, and he leans more into ambient, post-rock, and minimalist style music. Some of his songs don't even have clear melodies, and it makes for a very distinctive, recognizable sort of sound. He also tends to use a lot of layering in his tracks in Death Note, something I noticed even when I was just viewing the show. The anime has a lot of, conversations where nothing seems to be happening externally, save for like a hand gesture or an eye movement. Meanwhile, inside the characters' minds, all hell is breaking loose. And Taniuchi's compositions for these scenes are subtle yet commanding and melt perfectly into the entire vibe of the anime. It's clear that when composing the soundtrack, Taniuchi had some direct inspirations. And I only say Taniuchi because the comparisons we're going to look at today all stem from only his compositions. I do think Hirano obviously had some inspirations too, though not nearly as direct and in a much broader sense. Church music or something like neo-Baroque is a good way to describe what he wrote for Death Note. His use of choirs, harpsichords, orchestras, and haunting dissonance make it easy to see that he was classically trained, and it really helps to contribute to the whole cathedral god themes that show up in the show. Taniuchi, on the other hand, seemed to have more specific influences that inspired his Death Note tracks. Broadly speaking, he's likely influenced by Steve Reich, at least in style, and he is a musician known for being the pioneer of minimal music. His compositions focus on layering, playing the same phrase at different tempos, and allowing the music to phase in and out at his own pace. Now, more specifically, I've seen two artists thrown around that are regarded as being direct inspirations for Taniuchi's works on Death Note: Aphex Twin and Boards of Canada. Let's start with Aphex Twin. Aphex Twin, real name Richard David James, is an English composer that helped to popularize IDM, or intelligent dance music. His songs range from techno and acid to ambient and experimental, focusing on eerie atmospheres and strange melodies. His albums were a big influence on a ton of different artists, including Daft Punk, Linkin Park, Skrillex, and the aforementioned Steve Reich. So when it comes to Aphex Twin and Hideki Taniuchi's works, the first comparison I'd like to draw lies in the track Task Force Theme C. I went back and listened to this song, and actually I didn't recall it showing up in the anime. I rewatched some scenes with the task force that I thought might have featured it, but I didn't have any luck. So while I'm not sure it's actually in the show, it is included on the official Death Note OST. So let's take a listen. Now let's hear a song called Heliosphan from Aphex Twin's album Ambient Works 85 through 92. I think there's some clear inspiration here, both in the timbre of the instruments and specifically the melody line itself. It's similar both in the mood and the melody. And if you've seen Death Note, you'll definitely recognize this next tune, which is called Suiri, or I believe Reasoning in English. The moment I hear this, I can picture Light thinking about his next steps, just sitting on the edge of my seat and wondering what the hell he's gonna do next. It bears a striking resemblance to Aphex Twin's song Number 1, otherwise known as Cliffs. The way the chords move is what makes it sound so similar. Also, the strange ambient sort of vocal sound that shows up in Cliffs reappears in Suri in the form of a marimba, or maybe it's just a keyboard emulating some sort of mallet instrument, but the notes definitely correspond with the vocal sample that's used throughout Cliffs. So this may be an unpopular opinion, but I personally prefer Nier's theme over L's theme. L's theme is iconic and really synonymous with Death Note as a whole, but ever since my first time watching the show, Nier's theme always stuck out to me a little bit more. The melody line is so interesting and not quite as Halloween-esque as L's. And side note, a lot of people say that L's theme is copied from things like the theme of Halloween or Tubular Bells, which is the theme from The Exorcist. I view this more as a just inspiration, since creepy minimalistic piano melodies It's just nothing too groundbreaking. It's been done in many a horror film. Nier's theme has a different mood though. I think it's a lot more reminiscent of L's theme B, but let's take a listen. Many cite the source of Nier's theme as the song Nannou from Aphex Twin. This song is very interesting and scratches a certain part of my brain. It has a music box in it, and I think the way that it's manipulated just makes it sound so satisfying, especially with headphones. Anyway, take note of the melody and its similarities to Nier's theme. This next song makes me think of the scene where Jealous saves Misa Amane from certain death. Although the track is called Rem, my mind always jumps to Jealous and just makes me think about what a heartbreaking character he was. The song Rem is indeed a very ambient one. It makes you picture the bleakness of the Shinigami world, the endless nothingness, and the bleak outlook these gods of death have. It also holds this strange innocence that just makes you want to cry. Although the latter half of it becomes a bit more like lo-fi, which is not uncommon in this OST. I was surprised to find out that the Aphex Twin song that Rem's theme resembles is a song I've heard many times before. It's called this. I'm not going to try to say it out loud, but that's what it's called. And this song has gained a lot of popularity, particularly in short-form content online. At least on videos I've seen, it's when something pure or innocent or wholesome or nostalgic is happening. Especially stuff with kids, pets, and animals. I see this sound being used as background music for those types of shorts. The overall atmosphere of the songs are very alike. And look, I'm not trying to say that Taniuchi is word for word taking this composition or anything, but it is interesting to note that there are so many examples within this particular artist's music where Death Note's OST mirrors its vibe and feeling. Another song that evokes a very heavy, ambient, and even sorrowful feeling is the tune Taikutsu. Upon hearing this again, I felt that it sounded familiar, but I couldn't place what scene I'd heard it in. Turns out it was actually only used in the Death Note Relight 2 film. For those unfamiliar, the Relight films were basically a more condensed, watered-down retelling of the Death Note story from Ryuk's point of view. There are some extra scenes, one where Light is twerking on L's grave, and one where Taikutsu is used when L is addressing the Whammy Kids. I'm not sure why it wasn't used in portions of the actual anime, because it is a nice melancholy tune. This is the one that people regard as being really directly related to another song, that being Boards of Canada's tune Turquoise, Hexagon, Sun. To give some background on Boards of Canada, they're an electronic music duo consisting of two brothers. Their music has been described thematically as nostalgic, incorporating vintage synthesizer tones, samples, and analog equipment. These two are eerily similar. When I first heard this song, Turquoise, Hexagon, Sun, I felt like I was remembering Death Note, and it just fit right into the mood. Of course, I heard Death Note's music before I heard Boards of Canada's, but it is incredible how distinctly similar they sound. Taniuchi mostly drew from Aphex Twin, but this is one song from Boards of Canada where I feel there is a very strong resemblance. There is one other tune, the ever-popular Himitsu, or Secret, which for me is one of the songs that just sounds like Death Note. This is the song I think of when I think of the Death Note anime OST. It's the epitome of intellectual but dark themes that really define the series. While this one isn't quite as on the nose, I thought I'd feature it just in case. It does have a similar vibe, and it is called The Devil is in the Details by Boards of Canada. Overall, I think it's safe to say that Hideki Taniuchi definitely dipped into the stuff that he'd heard before that he imagined would pair well with the Death Note OST. Everything feels perfectly natural. While some people call it flat out copying, I've seen many others who say it really bears no resemblance, and that none of the examples really resonated with them as being similar. I definitely hear similarities and believe that Taniuchi drew heavy inspiration from both Aphex Twin and Boards of Canada, but I would like to hear your thoughts on the matter. Is it inspiration, blatant, or just simply an unconscious slip? Maybe he unknowingly dug into his memories while composing the soundtrack and crafted tracks similar to artists he'd heard before? Whatever the case, Death Note is one of the most unforgettable OSTs I've ever heard in an anime. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye! Overall, I think it's safe to say that Hideki Taniuchi? Is it Taniuchi or Tanuichi? I think it's safe to say that Hideki Taniuchi Hideki Taniuchi, holy shit. Why am I changing it? Overall, I think it's safe to say that Hideki Taniuchi